Hello everyone. A lot of people are asking me over the years which tools to use and what to use. I've tried many things and this is my little toolkit that would actually start you off, or if you're just needing a few strap changes or a few little things, some of them might be very good for you. I just made a little bundle here, and overall there's most probably a few things missing, but if there's any, I'll add them as we go. First of all, a lot of people freak out when I'm gonna use basically an X-Acto, proper heavy duty X-Acto for removing straps, okay? This is my everyday tool. Why? Because look, I'm just gonna do a little quick example. So I have a Moser here, expensive watch. I have a rubber band. So why it's very important to me to use this? First of all, don't use a cheap X-Acto that's very thin or that has a blade that's very narrow. What I'm looking for is to actually press on the strap. So I'm gonna press on it, just get right at the push pin, and I removed it in literally just a few seconds, okay? It's really quick. You can do it without damaging anything. And I'm not using the blade is only to actually catch on the pin and actually put it back on. So this is something I'm gonna use all the time. The other times I'm gonna use it, I have a video about that, is when people are using the wrong push pins on lugs that have no holes on the sides, and then those push pins don't actually have a shoulder on which I grabbed with this. So then the only choice you have is basically putting it in and coming with a hammer and breaking that pin. I never damaged a watch, I never damaged a bracelet, but it's kind of risky if you don't know what you're doing, because you're basically hammering on a movement inside a watch, and there's a dial, there are hands, there's everything. So you might damage the watch if you're hammering too hard. So you gotta take it slow, but you have to be careful. So the one screwdriver that I'm using all the time is the Bergeron screwdriver. They are pretty good quality. Don't buy the Chinese ones. They're gonna bend, they're gonna crack, literally break at the tips. Those tips are hardened high carbon steel, so pretty good. Even these, the tips are gonna chip all the time. You have to refinish them. So it's very important to have a proper screwdriver. This is a complete kit. Most probably the ones you might use all the time are the gray one, the red, the black, and the yellow. If you just need those, just buy those. The other ones are more for watchmaking, or the blue one you're never really gonna use. It's more gonna be for pocket watches or anything like that. When you're working on a watch, you might need a movement holder or most probably a watch holder. I actually just discovered that Seiko is making this S212 movement or watch holder. It's more a watch holder. It's very good. It's very stable on a table. It's not gonna move. As you see, I'm trying to move it around. It doesn't. Those little silicone or plastic little rollers can be replaced. You don't need to have the original ones. Anything that's literally the same size or whatever will work. You can adjust them from 3 different positions. So the side ones here, then you have a pretty big spring that actually helps you adjust it to any watch you have. I love this one. I just discovered it. It's super cheap. It's like $100 online or even less. Really good deal. If you go with the Bergeron one, I find it's not as practical. It's more for movements, sometimes watches, but it's more like smaller watches. Most of the time, like 34, 35 millimeter. Really good, very well made, but it's like $400. And I think you don't need that. It's overkill. Most people are really not going to use something that crazy, okay? That's something that, if you really want to go deep and then you buy multiple movement holders, watch holders, and then you have openers of all sorts, that's something that's really not required. Then what do you use when you open a watch? First of all, you can use the small one. That's a vintage one. They still make it today. So it's literally just an infinite screw that just screws on. See, I can keep on turning and it's an infinite screw. You can adjust it to any kind of watch that has notches on the back. That's practical. Or you can use the classic one. There are so many different versions of this. Chinese, again. I always tell people buy the Swiss ones, just because they're made to last a bit longer. And with Chinese, you never know You might have a company that does really well, and you might have a company that does something really cheap and sells them for a bit cheaper, and you might find that, you know, save a few bucks is worth it, but don't cheap out on tools like those, you know. I don't like those as much. You have to be very careful at holding the watch really horizontal to the moving plane. You're trying to force sideways. A lot of case backs were actually damaged by such tools, okay? Always tell people to be careful. Otherwise, I'm gonna go with a bigger one. And here, right now I have a Rolex adapter on it, which is easy to remove. Hold on. Yeah, I'll go with the bottom. So you have basically the key right here. You have the adapter right on top. So this is a Japanese adapter right here, I believe. This is a Vigor made in Japan. There's the Bergeron one as well. I have it, but I much prefer this one. And when it screws right in, basically, let me find a hole. When you have those, they're really practical. What's cool about the Vigor one, you have different bottom heads that are easily replaceable. On the Bergeron ones or similar ones, have a metal base. On those, you have the lug size adjustment, which on Belgium you might have different little inserts that are metal. On these ones they're plastic or very hard plastic. I much prefer those. You're not gonna scratch anything, you're not gonna mark the lugs because you're inserting the watch into the tool itself. And as well, even if something breaks, it's most probably gonna be the plastic if it's something that hard to open. I've never seen that happen, and I forced like a maniac on a couple of two doors. I remember one two door, I couldn't open it with any tool, including the Rolex tools that I have. And the big problem was that the case back had been mistreated, so it was closed at an angle. Nothing was really broken or anything such, but when I actually put all my weight on the tool, opened the watch, we heard a big pop. And I was with my dad back then. I didn't have the story yet, but it was super funny. And when I threaded it back in, everything went all right. But literally, it was just a little like end part of the thread that was bent, and it just threaded back in. Everything went all right, and I saved the watch. But for a lot of cases, if that happens, you might even have to scrap the whole case, which is not what we want on a Rolex or, you know, something extremely valuable. And that's why just being careful of threading back the case is important, because once you start screwing in, you might damage the whole watch. So be careful. This is something that don't force. If it doesn't go, it doesn't go, and you just use it for when you literally just close the case back at the end. Most of the time, we're just going to use a ball to open, to close. That's also something that is very practical. So, to go really fast again on tools, classic. Just if you have, you can even hold a watch in your hands. Obviously dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. Same thing with this, lots of strength to turn, but if you don't have a proper holder and you don't have the proper way of actually sitting down and forcing laterally instead of in different angles, you're gonna really damage the watch with this. This can also damage case backs. I've almost done it once. You have to be careful using the proper head for the bottom. There's different heads. You have to use a bit of your due diligence or a bit logic in those cases, just to avoid doing any kind of damage. You have even on this one, on the Vigor, what's cool, you have some heads that are also, I don't know if you'll see it on the picture, but one part is 90 degrees, the other part is 45 degrees. You have different types of heads, and I find that compared to the Belgian one, it's very well made. Obviously, I got this one with a base. It helped a lot throughout the years. This is my go-to tool when something refuses to open. You have a lot of strength here as well. And then if not, the most, let's say, big savior, use the ball. What you need to do is take some Windex, clean up the surface. Obviously, if you have a lot of dirt, we have fat on our fingers, clean them off. Your natural fat is gonna remove any kind of way of adhering to the case back. So this is very important. Just clean it off, wipe it, dry it. It's gonna dry really fast with a degreaser like a Windex, and then do the same thing on the case back, and it's gonna be perfect. So those are really proper tools. Next thing that a lot of people need help with is basically removing screws from a bracelet. Obviously, this is most probably the one Chinese tool that will work all the time. This is only to keep the bracelet perpendicular. I've had this for years. I never really bothered buying another one, and even me using it almost on a daily basis. I only broke one tooth here. Those are good. They're really perfect for every day. Then you might need something to push the pins on your bracelet. I have those that are one piece, very, very sturdy. I've used multiple ones that have longer pins. They break all the time. I prefer something that's shorter, that's sturdy, one single piece like that. No screws, no nothing. If I break it, I don't care. They're like $3, $4. My parts supplier sells those. The one thing that I always use on watches when removing bracelet pins or whatnot is a hammer. Very few people use the brass hammer. Brass normally doesn't mark steel, especially on bracelets. You want to tap and you don't want to mark the steel too hard. I did mark lately a Rolex for a customer and I felt so bad. We had to finish off those little things that I did like 100% on me. I took all the responsibility, even if I didn't charge him to begin with on that little thing. But it's very important to actually have proper tools like a hammer. Those hammer heads are also removable. You have a bunch of those available online. You can choose different heads. Obviously, you can also go with the plastic ones. Very good, very practical. If you don't want to damage anything, next time I know I'm gonna be more careful on certain Rolexes that are vintage. I never marked a Rolex before, but in this case, the bronze was a bit too hard and it was just doing little lines, and we managed to do it right away. Another thing that's very important, obviously, I use tweezers. A lot of people want to buy tweezers online for doing little jobs or whatnot. What I use all the time is brass tweezers. They're really easy to finish off. So what I'm gonna use is, let's say, if I find that they're too narrow or let's say too broad in terms of the head itself, I'm just gonna finish them with sandpaper. I just have a piece here. I just use those all the time. So I'm just gonna slide it over the sandpaper, and what it's gonna do is that it's gonna narrow the head if I need to use it for something that's very specific. Obviously, I have different ones. They're easy to refinish. Brass is soft and it's not gonna mark hands. It's not gonna mark anything when you're using them. So a lot of the other tweezers are marking stainless steel. Those are not, so they're really perfect for every day. I never had a problem with them, and they're really, I'd say, the springiness of them or whatever you want to call them, unless you really want to play around with them. Now it's more springy. If I play around with it this way, I feel that they have a bit more strength and they're really easy to work with. So I find that they're, for someone who's not even a watchmaker like myself, I kind of use that all the time and they're perfect. It avoids also creating problems. I'm not as steady as a watchmaker that's doing this every day. I might slide a bit or whatever. I'm not gonna do any damage on stainless steel or on a movement. If I want to remove a screw or anything, they're just perfect. The last thing, obviously, a lot of people ask me what their watch size is, and I always use a micrometer. You can use different ones. This one goes to 100 of a millimeter. It's perfect. You don't really need to go any further if you're not doing anything super precise. You have inches and you have millimeters. Obviously, it's really good for every day if you need to find the proper crown, you need to find proper the screw, the push pins, the lug width on a watch, the size of a watch, anything that you might need that helps you, that's one of them. And I'm gonna add that this is also gonna help you replacing crystals. So if you need a crystal measured, use this and then you can actually measure and remove it with the proper tool here. This is basically just a gripper, just presses around the plastic crystal or plexi crystal, and you can actually remove it easier unless you want to break it. Some people I've seen breaking them. I broke them in the past when they're all cracked. I know that actually grabbing this is actually more dangerous because the crystal can actually implode on the dial. And if you have a watch that basically opens only from the front, you might use different techniques to remove a crystal. But I'd say this is something as well, if you have vintage watches, it's something that is very, very important for everything. I think I did a pretty big summary of what I'm using on a daily basis. Why did I do this video? It's because I was requested so many times by customers, by people that call me, hey, where can I buy this? Where can I buy that? I'm showing you what is out there. You might buy vintage on eBay or an old watchmaker that you might know. You can always ask them, hey, you're retiring, can I buy a few tools? Tools are expensive. Obviously, like if you buy something like that, you might pay up to $1,000 US for a proper opener, even more depending on how many heads you have, what's the utility of those. You don't need to go that crazy in terms of spending. The holder Seiko, $100. Anything crystal is something like around $30, 20, 30, $40 around there. Bergeron screwdriver kit, roughly $200 more or less, depends where you buy them. I bought this a few years back, so I don't know. I bought a few kits obviously over the years. I don't know what the market is right now on those. If you buy different openers, we talked about that earlier. I think you can find those at $20, $30 online. This as well, they come with different heads. Those are, the beginner's tools for opening watches. Then a holder normally comes in a kit, $20 kits from China or whatever, $30. You might have a few screwdrivers or whatnot. This is the one tool that I always use. The screwdrivers always broke on me when I started over 20 years ago, and that was something super cheap, so I would avoid those unless it's for the strap holder. Tweezers, there are guys online that are selling used ones. So let's say you have a manufacturing company that actually sells the overstock, or they use them for maybe a couple of years and then they get rid of them. I bought a few kits on eBay. There was one guy that was selling like 12 of those or 13 of those at a time for like $200. If you were to buy them brand new, calculate around, I'd say maybe $700 Canadian, $800 Canadian for the whole kit of 12. So for me, it was easy to actually buy two kits. I have tweezers for a lifetime, and I can even give a few away if people needed them around me. And I would still have some. So with 24 tweezers of brass, titanium, and all sorts, I'm all good. Last thing here, Rolex opener. Those are variable from 2,000 up to $10,000 US. Very expensive. It's not for everyone, obviously. We use those every day. So for a dealer, it's very important. I authenticate watches all the time. So I need all sorts of tools and openers to verify what's going on. That's kind of what sums up everything that I have here. There's a growing community of collectors and passionate people. I know a lot of young people as well that are starting to dabble into watches. I'd say having the proper tools is very important. As a collector myself, I used to have tools way before being a dealer. Obviously, I've learned. That's why I'm showing you different things that I'm using now that are shortcuts to basically trying different things and then getting to the tools that I'm actually using right now. There are many companies out there that are making tools, each one his own, so you can try different things. I avoid talking about other things that I'm also using, but there are more specialty tools to remove bezels, to remove crystals, and so on and so forth. And I say if you need anything as such, do your research. If you want to comment, ask me about a few things, I'll reply. And if you do have any other ideas or items that I missed, write it in the comments. I'll maybe do another video maybe in a year or two about those, and we can talk about that further on. Thank you very much, guys. I hope this is gonna help you in your watch projects and watch working abilities and everything. Proper tool is gonna last you a lifetime, and I hope you will enjoy it as well as I do. Thank you, guys. Have a great week.